My mother, once a fierce warrior against Brian's betrayal, now whispers sweet nothings about her ex within months. He's changed, she says while I scream inside. I cannot let him back in my life, not if he built me a castle. How do I hold my ground as she falls for a liar? Okay, so everyone I have spoken with has no idea what I should do, primarily because I do not know of anyone who has been in this situation, so I am hoping Reddit can connect me with the right people regarding this matter. As usual, this is a throwaway account. All names are fictitious and personal details have been modified for privacy. Also, I apologize in advance, this is very long. Sorry. Historically, mothers and daughters have not had the easiest relationships, and my mother and I are no exception. I can confidently state that we have never been particularly close. After my mother and father, 53 years old, male, separated when I was 7, I spent a significant amount of time with my father because my mother did not have the flexible work hours that he possessed. I do not remember much of this period in our lives, but I do recall how depressed she was. She grew up extremely religious, so being the first woman in her family and church to divorce was no small task. I can only imagine what she experienced. That being said, it meant I grew up quite independent. I remember being capable of taking care of myself, my older brother, he is currently 24 years old, male, the pets, and managing the entire household when necessary. This was not a consistent occurrence, but was not necessarily rare either. I did not mind at the time, however, it meant I did not really connect with her in the same way I connected with my father. All of this background is relevant, I assure you. Fast forward to high school when she introduced me to Brian, 51 years old, male, whom she married when I was in year 10, 15 years old. Both of my parents have remarried, and I honestly could not have imagined surviving my teenage years without them. Step-parents are often depicted as cunning or evil, but having my stepmother has been transformative. We understand each other much better and are significantly more similar even in appearance. I have always perceived my mother as somewhat envious of this, but she did her best to never display it, and neither of us discusses it, as I know it is no one's fault, so bringing it up would simply be unkind. I began to confront my own issues, and like most teenage girls, I started to have conflicts with my mother. I will give my younger self some credit. I was grappling with experiences that some individuals never encounter in their lifetimes, and especially my mother has never experienced: homophobia, bullying, eating disorders, depression, self-harm, suicidal ideation, etc. So understanding one another became quite challenging. The COVID pandemic arrived during my final year of high school and made it clear to me that we probably functioned better in smaller doses. However, after I spent a year in lockdown with my father and stepmother, my mother began to understand why we did not always get along and apologized for some things she had done during my childhood and teenage years. This was wonderful for our relationship. While at university, although I chose to remain full-time at my father's after turning 18, I visited her once a week. We never fought. I believed our relationship could not improve until my mother called me to talk one weekend. She sat me down and explained that she was leaving my stepfather of 10 years because she had discovered evidence of his infidelity with a coworker for a year and a half. We sat on that couch talking, laughing, and crying for hours. Let me tell you, this was shocking. Brian had always been a good and reliable stepfather. He taught me how to drive, helped me with anything without hesitation, and when I was looking for internships in university, he contacted everyone he knew who could assist. Thus, discovering that he had not been the family man he had presented himself to be was heartbreaking, particularly for my mother. If the first divorce was difficult, I could not imagine how she felt about her second. However, her attitude about everything brought us closer. She was thrilled about trading the large, cold, half-renovated house for a small apartment in the city, providing enough space for sleepovers and within walking distance of bars and clubs. She had goals of learning a new language, attending cooking or dance classes, traveling, and overall experiencing freedom. As someone who is not only very independent but also a major introvert who loves solo traveling, I was ecstatic for her, especially since she was so enthusiastic about it all, and I was excited that we finally had something in common. The decision to leave Brian continued to be validated as she saw him through lawyers and realtors. From every interaction she described, it seemed he turned out to be a genuinely dishonest man at his core, despite having been a skilled liar. So you can imagine my surprise when, during my weekly visit, she told me he had moved back into the house. She claimed that because the house was half renovated, he had to complete it before they put it up for sale. Brian works in trades. Personally, I was a bit confused as to why he needed to remain in the house to do so, but I figured she was an adult and he had the decency to find somewhere else to stay during our weekly visits, so I did not question it. However, every week during my visits, she spoke about him an alarming amount. For example, he is helping me with, he told me he is in therapy now. He seems quite regretful and guilty about it all. He asked about you today. I can understand why she would discuss him frequently. If I were in her position, I think I would want to vent about him relentlessly. Still, it was the gradual warming up to him that made me uncomfortable. Nevertheless, she allowed me to maintain my distance and did not cross any boundaries. Finally, about 5 months after expelling him, she confessed that she did not feel finished with the relationship. She described him as so different now and asserted that their relationship was better than it had ever been. She also admitted that I was the only person who knew this, and she did not wish to tell anyone else just yet other than my brother. So I tried my best to be sensitive to her feelings and told her that she was doing the right thing by following her heart, but I was honest about my lack of understanding. She accepted this, stating she did not understand it herself, and concluded the conversation by mentioning that they were going to split for a year regardless, that he was going to move states to live with his family, and that she was going through with getting a small apartment 20 minutes from the house. They would revisit the relationship in a year once they both had some time to heal. I felt a bit relieved and moved on. However, for the next month it was Brian this, Brian that. I discovered he was now living full-time at the house, had spent time with some extended family, and apart from the vacant spots on their ring fingers, they seemed to be back to normal. I was confused, and to be honest, disgusted. Brian had not only cheated on my mother for a year and a half with a woman he still works with, but without getting into specifics, he disrupted our entire extended family. Not to mention, he destroyed our immediate family and shattered all of our trust. Brian had 2 children the same age as my brother and me, and although things were a bit tense, I took some pride in having a large family, often telling people we resembled the Brady Bunch. So when he tore our family apart, I had to quietly mourn that segment of my life and the things I had anticipated due to it being an aunt, enjoying large family Christmases and other related sentimental family experiences. When Christmas turned out to be exceedingly quiet, cold, and overall unpleasant, it was difficult for all of us. However, what truly upset me was receiving an email from Brian on Christmas morning with a receipt showing that he had paid for a month of my schooling. I take extra classes on weekends and pay out of pocket for them. He did something similar for my brother, and since it was the first time he had contacted us since the divorce, we were quite taken aback. She told us to just get over it already, then hurried us out the door shortly after because she was having Brian over for Christmas lunch. It felt like a slap in the face. I think what frustrated me the most was that she did not recognize how uncomfortable this made my brother and me. A couple of days later was my former step-sibling's birthday. She called me to ask what I wanted her to write in the card for me, and when I said I did not want to be included in the gift, she finally took the hint that something was wrong with me. A week later, we met at a local pub to discuss it, only to end up rushing out after dinner because we began to attract attention with our tears and soft yelling. Essentially, I explained that I had no interest in being related to Brian ever again. After what he did to her, there was no way for me to regain that trust. I stated verbatim, not if he built me a castle, not if he groveled at my feet, not if I could somehow guarantee that he would never do it again. He does not get that from me. I remember saying that because I had practiced in the mirror what I wanted to convey for a week straight, laughing. She lashed out at me after that. She did not understand why I would be so closed-minded, and I am paraphrasing here, but she did not comprehend why I was denying her love and called me selfish. I was no longer interested in what she had to say after that. However, she refused to leave the car unless I agreed to return to her house to discuss it further. Ultimately, after hours of crying and arguing, we reached an impasse. Although she apologized for what she said when she was angry, she still did not grasp why I would shut out someone who had done so much for me and why I would take it out on my step-siblings as well. Meanwhile, I did not understand why she would want a man like that in her life. For the past couple of months, she has been in her new apartment, and per the boundaries we established after the fight, we do not talk about Brian, my former step-siblings, or anyone in his family. She has respected this, and I am grateful for that. However, this brings us to the last couple of weeks. Either she lied to my face, or she phrased things incorrectly because they are actively dating just long distance, as he still lives a couple of states away. I cannot express how uncomfortable and disgusted this makes me feel about both of them. My mother is careful with her words, so something tells me she has lied and has been waiting for me to figure it out on my own without disrespecting my boundaries, as she has been vacationing in his state once a month since he moved, and as I write this, she just returned from a 2-week vacation with him. How do I know she is with him? She hates solo traveling, does not know anyone but him and his family in that state, is never holding the camera in any of the photos she posts, has been suspiciously vague about the trips, which, if you know my mother, is not like her. And last but not least, last night she sent me a video of her and he is in half of it. I am at my wit's end here. I am angry. I am angry at her for lying. I am angry at him for being a liar and a cheat, and I am angry at both of them for. Honestly, I do not even know what at this point. They are getting back together, there is no doubt in my mind about that, so now I have to decide what I will do. One thing is for sure, he is not returning to my life, ever. This is where I need guidance. When she comes to me with the truth and the inevitable confession that they are getting back together, how do I protect myself and my boundaries? How do I even begin to empathize with her choices? How do I continue to have a relationship with my mother if he fully re-enters her life? Mostly, I am uncertain about what kind of positive relationship my mother and I can nurture going forward if she decides to return to him. As I mentioned, we are not close, but she is my mother, and I cannot lose her to a contemptible man like Brian. The small consolation I have is that I am planning to move permanently overseas after I complete my studies, unrelated to this situation, but honestly, it is not doing much to persuade me otherwise. Thus, realistically, I would only have to confront this situation perhaps 2 months a year in the future. Part of me wonders if my mother is counting on this so he can move back in the future. Still, this is a conversation that will need to occur by the end of the year, so I need to be prepared for it. This is where I will conclude this post. Thank you for reading if you made it this far. I hope this reaches anyone who might have experienced a similar situation and can offer some advice. Story 2. I unfriended Mark on Snap after I felt ignored, thinking, I won't keep men who aren't engaged. But when he begged me to add him back, I couldn't resist. Now I've lost the connection I thought could be special, and my heart's saying I made a mistake. Can I fix it? I am currently interviewing for a job in my hometown. I am in the final stage, and it seems extremely likely that I will secure the position and move back home. This move is greatly needed, as a year ago I was laid off during the week my company relocated me across the country, leaving me without a support system or personal connections. I have been working hard to regain my footing since then. Even if I do not land this job, I am only concentrating on positions that are either located there or remote so I can return home. Because of these circumstances, I felt it was acceptable to begin talking and dating through Hinge about 3 weeks ago. I have barely used dating apps, as I was in a relationship for 12 years and engaged. We broke up 2 years ago and sold our house last year before my move. My dating experience has been very limited in real life, consisting mostly of unsuccessful talking stages or men who wanted me to be the other woman. After being on the app again for about a week, I received a rose from someone named Mark. He was 34, matched my physical type, and had listed nearly all of my interests. As I mentioned, I am usually accustomed to being the other woman with men around my age, or if they are single, they are between 21 and 28. I matched back and we began talking over the weekend for a few days. It honestly felt perfect, easy, and enjoyable. I was upfront about not being local yet, and he was fine with that, happy to take things slow with a foundation for the future, even discussing the possibility of being my date for my wedding at the end of May. As the weekend ended, he asked to move our conversations to phone or Snapchat. I am an avid user of Snapchat, but I primarily use it for positive reasons. I have moved a lot and like to share my life with family and friends. However, because I was hurt deeply by 2 married men on Snapchat, I prefer not to keep men on my account whom I have not known for a long time, who are not family, or who are not interacting with me in a way I find acceptable. Nevertheless, I decided to give him both my phone number and Snapchat, feeling hopeful since we connected so well. He sent me a Snapchat immediately and we started chatting there. We stayed up all night until 5 a.m. texting until he had to go to bed to prepare for work. Since I am currently unemployed, my sleep schedule is unusual. I had just had another panel interview that morning, so I stayed awake, had my interview, and then went to sleep. However, before Mark went to bed, he said, I will text you in the morning. I asked if he meant on my phone, and he confirmed. His having my number while I did not have his made me anxious. Yes, I have anxious attachment, and I am already in therapy while pursuing my master's degree in psychology. When I woke up later that day around 3 p.m., I had no text from him, but I did have 2 snaps. I responded as soon as I could, worried that he might think I was not interested. However, he did not reply, not until the next day, and he only responded on Snapchat. I texted him there, attempting to start a conversation. The following day, he sent a snap with maybe 3 messages altogether, despite my asking questions and trying to elicit responses. The next day, I received a snap from him to start a streak, but no responses to any of my messages or snaps. All my messages were left unopened. This pattern continued the next day, and my anxious attachment was triggered, prompting me to devise a plan. I decided that if he did not message or interact with me the next day, I would take the loss and remove him before I felt overwhelmed. So I sent a morning snap the next day and left it on open. I messaged him on Hinge saying, maybe you lost interest, maybe this is not a good time, or maybe you have other options, all of which is fine, but I won't keep men on my Snapchat who are not interacting with me. You have my number if you would like to continue connecting as we were, but if not, I wish you the best. Then I removed him. Within minutes, I received a reply on Hinge asking why I removed him and to add him back. There was no apology, just a casual acknowledgement. I added him back and we discussed expectations further. I expressed my reasons for my actions, and he admitted he was poor at responding, stating that he found it attractive that I spoke up and called him out. He promised he would improve. For the next 2 days, our interactions were similar to how we initially started, and I felt very confident that this was someone special for me. Then he went out with friends on Thursday in the middle of the day and got drunk all night. His communication was sporadic, but I expected that since he had informed me he was going out. I was not his girlfriend, so he did not owe me anything. However, he returned home around 10 p.m. and began texting me frantically on Snapchat. He still never used my phone number despite our 2 weeks of knowing each other. Since he was intoxicated, he wanted to have a more intimate conversation. I said I would entertain some parts of it by answering questions to get to know each other, but I would not participate in anything beyond that since I was not his girlfriend, and those privileges come with being with me. He was very complimentary regarding my stance, and repeatedly mentioned how attractive he found it that I held my ground regarding communication and investment. He expressed gratitude for my persistence in getting through to him, as he felt I was someone meaningful to him. We enjoyed wonderful banter and I was blushing all night. Eventually, he did send a text to my phone that night with intimate photos, which I found unusual as that typically does not happen on Snap. I have an iPhone and he has an Android, and I noticed that when I replied, there were no delivered notifications, which usually appear when I message others with the same setup. Ultimately, we hung up and I felt very confident that I was on the path to finding my person. The following day, I did not hear from him until nighttime, and he wanted to return to the intimate conversation on Snapchat. His exact request was to talk to him while he engaged in self-pleasure, and then we could spend the night on the phone discussing our relationship. It seemed harmless, so I agreed. He called and we began chatting, but within a minute he hung up. I tried to call back, but it did not go through, perhaps because it was a Google number that only accepted incoming calls. However, he called back and explained that his dog had interrupted him, so he had to hang up. We resumed our conversation, but I asked about his phone situation. I am always honest and express what I think to avoid resentment building up. He laughed and assured me that it was just a normal phone. As I started speaking again, he hung up less than 2 minutes into the conversation. I tried calling back twice. During those attempts, the calls went through but eventually reached his voicemail, which was full. I sent a text to both his phone and Snapchat, including a playful message saying I could not wait to talk to him once he was done, yet I received no reply for hours. All my messages remained unopened and he did not call me. I was genuinely hurt. Eventually, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, the same situation persisted, causing me to feel worried. I messaged him again, expressing that I was upset, sad, and concerned. It was not until 7 p.m. that I finally received a reply, which simply said he had just woken up. I did not believe him or feel reassured. Since I do not drink, I allowed things to be as they were and tried to manage my anxiety by mirroring his attitude. He had not apologized or checked in on me, which annoyed me. However, the following 3 days consisted of him leaving me on read again. I woke up today and reiterated my stance. If he did not respond, I would remove him permanently because this did not feel good and I could not focus on him. He did not respond, so I removed him again and messaged him on Hinge, expressing a sentiment similar to my initial message but adopting a sassier tone since he had mentioned he liked that side of me, stating that a fan can stay a fan on my public profile. Surprisingly, he replied on Hinge almost immediately, saying, "I have been working and had a reunion." I was furious, to be honest. I responded saying it was interesting that he could reply here but not on Snapchat, which he insisted on using. It felt disheartening to invest in him without receiving anything in return. Although I thought we would have a conversation and he understood I wanted our communication to occur on our phones, I received a message that said "Akiu" followed by his removal from our match. That was not what I had wanted. I simply wanted to stop using Snapchat, which was driving me crazy, and hopefully establish a more consistent method of communication. I texted his number with my response trying to explain my feelings, but I am unsure whether it was delivered. I genuinely liked him. The way we spoke about the future was so aligned. The problem was that his behavior did not match my expectations, but we were still new to each other and I had not yet communicated that. I did not want to come across as needy or scare him off, but I also value myself and refuse to let someone take advantage of me. I believe that drunken words reflect sober thoughts, so I place significant importance on those conversations. I am seeking advice on whether this situation can be salvaged. He is unlikely to reappear on Hinge. However, the more I reflect on it, the more I believe I may have lost a potential partner because of my anxiety regarding Snapchat. In hindsight, I would not have given it out until we were more established. Should I add him back on Snapchat? What other options do I have that won't make me seem desperate? Did I make a mistake, or did I handle it appropriately? Story 3. I'm Noi 39, and after almost a decade with Nick, my world shattered when I learned he got his 21-year-old rebound macula pregnant while I was battling my own losses. "We just slept together a few times," he says, "but I'm done hiding their toxic secrets. Can I turn my pain into power?" I am a 39-year-old female named Noi, and I have been in a relationship with my partner. a 39-year-old male named Nick, for nearly 10 years. We have two young boys and recently suffered the loss of twin girls at 13 weeks gestation. To provide some context, we have been attempting to navigate the aftermath of his affair with a 21-year-old undocumented Mexican woman he encountered at his job site during the summer of 2022. He is employed by the Carpenters Union, and job site changes occur frequently. I discovered he had physically cheated on me 3 times with her just 3 weeks before the birth of our second son. This period marked a profoundly dark time for me, and to be quite honest, I am still struggling to escape this depressive grip, which I refer to as Nick, who is constantly hovering over me. I have lost 20 pounds, my hair has become thinner, my face has changed drastically, and my mental health is not sufficient. The betrayal has induced feelings I have never experienced before, leaving me feeling lost and confused. We attended some couples therapy, and I outlined several conditions that needed to be met for me to even consider reconciliation, including individual therapy for both of us, continued couples therapy, sharing our locations, spending more one-on-one time together, fostering open communication, and for him to clean up his Facebook account, something that should have been straightforward, right? These points were discussed, addressed, and agreed upon to be accomplished before the end of the year 2023. The consequences were clear. I would not feel comfortable living with him if these conditions were not met, and he would need to find alternate accommodations. By early November, things escalated due to his lack of progress, so I gathered his belongings and placed them by the door in preparation for his return from work. Rather than being upset about our relationship being on the rocks, he made a decision that only he was aware of, believing that because I touched his belongings again, he had been kicked out several times due to his blatant disrespect towards me and our family. This marked the end of our relationship. He promptly set out to find the next best option to believe his sob story and engage with her as soon as possible. For nearly 3 weeks, he rarely visited our boys, instead opting to nurture his relationship with the new rebound Makla. I was unaware of her existence until it was too late and I was already pregnant with our twin girls. I told him to stay away from me, and for legal reasons I cannot disclose whether she was still involved. I was very serious about this. Our entire relationship had lasted as long as it had because of our legal issues. This troubling interaction had been ongoing since our first separation in 2020. Even with litigation, did this deter him? No. I warned him that he needed to stop or I would inform Makla the rebound about his actions or leave me alone. According to him, he went to her residence in eastern Connecticut, parked in her garage where her Tesla was located, invited her to come outside, and confessed to her in the garage that he had been behaving poorly and was still involved with me. Just as a reminder, I had normalized this toxic cycle and had given up on myself. We argued, he fled, cheated in some form, returned without addressing any issues, ignored my attempts at conversation, and I remained oblivious to his reckless behaviors because I truly believed in my heart that he would never betray me in such a manner. He was extremely charismatic, always spoke a big game, and was quite convincing with his lies. Even after confessing this to her, Makla deemed him to be an honest man and commended him for having the courage to speak the truth. According to him, she informed him that she was sterile and unable to conceive, which meant that from the very start, they engaged in unprotected sex while he was still involved with me during our litigation process. I was thoroughly disgusted to learn that even after his confession, she chose to reach out to him for sexual encounters even though he was purportedly working things out with me. I was largely unaware of what transpired between the two of them, and I had been pleading with him to tell me the truth about who she was and the nature of their brief relationship before he decided to return and not leave me be. He refused to disclose anything, and I sensed something was amiss. During his affair with Lily in the summer of 2022, he revealed everything to me because I had made it a condition for moving forward that he tell me the truth regarding that incident. Therefore, I expected the same transparency concerning Makla. He continued to disregard my feelings, ignoring my pain, tears, weight loss, and the fact that I was not myself, as he failed to be honest with me and did not respect my boundaries. I neglected my own well-being and began to experience spotting. I went to the emergency room and he emerged unexpectedly from behind some bushes as I walked to my car, following me to the hospital. Together, we discovered that I had miscarried our girls. I had not been myself since the birth of my second son. Not even a week after my miscarriage, he began to reveal bits of the truth, but only after begging for forgiveness and inquiring if we could work through anything. He dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant. I felt as if a part of me had died. All I wanted was a name, and that was what he chose to share. Evidently, after claiming she was infertile, she continued to engage in sexual relations with him several more times, having known each other for only about 1 month. Furthermore, after confessing his sordid actions, the pregnant infertile woman told him she was expecting and did not want him to be involved at all. She requested that he keep this information from me. He failed to inform her that I was definitely pregnant, while he was badmouthing me to her regarding the possibility of my own pregnancy. Therefore, both were aware of the possibility that I was pregnant, yet still chose to engage in unprotected sex multiple times. He performed the whole routine about how if the child was his, he would be involved in that child's life just like he was with all his other children, and so forth. To summarize, my question is, since Makla asked to keep her pregnancy a secret and requested that he never tell me, what does she expect when she continues to communicate with him regarding updates about their child? Is she expecting him to take more time away from our boys, whom he selfishly neglects in favor of spending time with her? Does she anticipate that he will leave suddenly to be with her when she delivers? If she wanted to keep this a secret, then why does she continue communicating with him about the baby? Or is it because these two individuals decided to continue their sexual relationship knowing I was still involved? 10 years together, and she believes him after he has been out of the house for less than a week and is ready to move on from a decade-long relationship? Or was she resentful that he did not choose to stay with her, which I wish he had, and that he told her he still loved me? So she decides to keep a child that belongs to a man who already has a family, having only known each other and been intimate for a mere month, despite his assertion that it was a bad idea and too soon. Clearly, she does not want to maintain this as a secret, so I will no longer protect these two individuals who think keeping a secret like this is acceptable. I will expose everything as part of my healing process. Being a mother is one of the most selfless roles there is, and here you are, Makla, pursuing motherhood in the most selfish way imaginable. And do not think he has escaped my wrath. I am stronger now, wiser, and have support from all sides, and I will not be silenced. 10 years of his manipulation is about to come to an end, and I feel increasingly liberated as I plan my exit. I am sharing my truth. I desire nothing more than to heal and be the most present and best mother I can be for my boys. I hope you two miscreants can find a way back to one another and live foolishly ever after based on the choices that brought you to this point. So wherever you are hiding, Makla, from Eastern Connecticut, having met the father of my children near his job site working on the new Great Wolf Lodge at Foxwoods Casino, driving a Tesla and owning your home while claiming you want to somehow escape across the state. Are you concerned that I will become your stepmother? Given his actions, that would indeed occur since that child is a sibling to mine, and you believe this was designed for my protection. I want to take a more significant approach in sharing their secret, telling my story, recounting 10 years of trauma, and chronicling all the chaos he and his family thrive within by creating an entire series documenting the past decade of my life on TikTok. I already went viral once, garnering 22,400 views on one of my videos. I hope this blows up significantly. Story 4. My girlfriend left me heartbroken after 2 months of no contact, quickly seeking out other men. Trust me, I'm not looking for anyone else, she said, yet she flooded my feed with posts bashing me. Now I'm left questioning everything. Was I disposable? It has been exactly 2 months since my girlfriend, 23 years old, and I, 24 years old, decided to take a break. And honestly, I need advice because I feel very lost. I will try to keep this as concise as possible, although the story is lengthy. I am unsure if this behavior is avoidant or something worse. All I know is that it hurts. I met my girlfriend during my sophomore year of high school when she was a freshman. She was completely obsessed with me to the point of following me around campus and taking photos of me without my knowledge. In hindsight, that was probably a significant red flag. At the time, I did not realize she had feelings for me, so we never dated in high school. We reconnected in college and we started talking almost to the point of getting together, then she vanished. This was heartbreaking, and a year would go by before I learned what had happened. That year I joined the military after college, and she appeared on my social media again. We began to rekindle our connection, and I discovered that she had moved to a different state and deleted all her social media and contact information because her ex-boyfriend had been blackmailing her with nude photos and videos she made for him. Her parents nearly disowned her because they disapproved of her dating this older guy who essentially had no future in life. They told her that while she lived under their roof, it would not be allowed, so she falsely claimed she had broken up with him, but in reality she had not. This created a very negative dynamic between her and her family. Fast forward, she and I finally started dating, and everything was magical during the honeymoon phase. Looking back, things moved far too quickly. However, I attributed her love bombing to the fact that she was trying to make up for lost time after liking me for 7 years. Early in our relationship, she confided that she had a problem with self-sabotaging relationships and dissociating, but refused to provide further details. She also told me she could not feel empathy for others to the same extent as most people and believed that was why she struggled to make friends. During our time together, she would snap at me and become filled with rage unexpectedly, which would lead to me feeling sad and quiet, ultimately making her angrier. Throughout the entire relationship, I was very loving, and she often told me that I was even better than she had dreamed of. I surprised her with bouquets of flowers every month, if not bi-weekly, performed acts of service to make her life easier at school, wrote love letters and long messages consistently, and treated her like a goddess. Things seemed well on my end. I never stopped receiving praise and appreciation from her, although she did not reciprocate much in return. One thing that immediately troubled me was that she was lying to her parents about our relationship and my existence. I expressed my discomfort with this repeatedly, warning her that she was repeating the same mistake she made with her ex by lying about him. However, she ultimately snapped at me and told me to stop bringing it up, so I did. A few months later, I discovered that one of the boys she frequently communicated with on Instagram was an ex-boyfriend, which did not sit well with me. Initially, I thought he was just a friend until one day I was FaceTiming her while her best friend was in the room. Her best friend inadvertently mentioned this boy and talked about how my girlfriend had dated him, a fact I had not been told by my girlfriend. Personally, I believe that you should not communicate with past partners when you are in a serious new relationship, and at the very least, she should have informed me about their history. This also bothered me because I knew that if I had done the same thing with a previous girlfriend, I would have been admonished. At the beginning of our relationship, I made it very clear that I was strongly Christian, and she began mirroring everything I said about my beliefs and values. I explicitly stated that I was waiting until marriage and abstaining from sexual contact. She claimed she was waiting as well, which made me happy. However, a few months later, she slipped up during a conversation and unintentionally admitted that she was not a virgin. I later confronted her about this, and she admitted she had been lying for months because she knew I would be upset. What truly bothered me was not her past but the lying itself, which made it sting. If she had been honest from the start, I likely would have overlooked it. Her deceit, however, deeply upset me. A month later, we attempted to conceive a child together, spending time together while I was on leave from the military. I slept with her believing we would marry as she had promised me numerous times. During this visit, I wanted to meet her parents, but she continued lying about my existence, which hurt me significantly. I felt that her parents deserved to know we were trying to get engaged, but I accepted that I would have to meet them later. Fast forward a week after attempting to conceive, I discovered she had texted another ex-boyfriend with whom she had slept in the past. This shattered my mental health and made me feel terrible. Nevertheless, I remained with her and told her it could not happen again. Every month or two, I would bring up these four lies in hopes that she would provide some reassurance, but she would consistently refuse to take accountability or would offer excuses instead. This prolonged the pain I felt from these situations, perpetuating the cycle. Eventually, 6 months later, she told me that whenever I brought up her actions, she felt like a monster and a whore, so I stopped discussing it. She recommended that I seek therapy because she could not assist me in moving past it. I eventually went to therapy and informed her that I forgave her for everything she had done, and I apologized for being so upset. In retrospect, that is a bit absurd. Imagine if I had micro-cheated on her, refused to take accountability, and then sent her to therapy because I could not handle talking about it anymore. In general, she avoided having difficult conversations with me at all costs and would try to act as though everything was fine. As soon as I told her that I had finally moved on, she began to act extremely cold and distant. I kept asking her what was wrong, and she continued making grandiose promises of us being together forever and marrying, claiming she was happy. During this time, she also began expressing concerns that I was cheating on her, revealing a significant insecurity. I reassured her of my faithfulness constantly, but her shift in demeanor felt very unexpected and sudden. Then one day I called her and she lashed out at me, claiming I made her feel terrible about herself, that she felt disgusting, and that I had made her feel this way by bringing up certain issues. I asked her if she wanted to break up at least 10 different times, and she said no every time. I then inquired whether she wanted to stay together, and she provided several bizarre excuses as to why she did not, such as my failure to download a couples app on the App Store. She was also very upset that I had not annotated a Bible she gave me, even though that had never been discussed. I assured her I could easily address all those issues, but she told me she no longer wanted to proceed yet. She did not want to break up. Finally, I suggested taking a break, which she eagerly accepted, claiming she needed time to heal from how my discussions about her actions made her feel. I agreed, with the condition that we could not see other people during the break. She responded that she could not ask that of me, but asked me to trust her that she was not looking for anyone else. I found that very strange, but I let it go. We both expressed our love for each other and hung up, agreeing to go no contact. For 2 days, my Instagram feed was inundated with her newly liked reels and photos about fearful dismissive avoidance, most of which seemed apologetic toward me, acknowledging her selfishness, etc. At the time, I did not know much about attachment styles and how they affect relationships. Then after 2 days, she began liking numerous posts about how terrible of a person I was, how feminine I was, how she deserved better, and how relieved she felt from the breakup. I was in shock. She then started liking posts that essentially justified cheating and discussed having situationships while in a relationship. Additionally, she began commenting suggestive remarks on male models' Instagram pages, which left me heartbroken. I am extremely confused and hurt by this entire situation. Was I discarded? Is she just a bad person? I am at a loss here. Should I continue waiting for her to heal, or do I cut my losses and move on? Story 5. Last night I accidentally triggered my friend's panic attack during game night. "If you do this again, I will exclude you from here," he said, leaving me in shock. I never knew he struggled with this. Now, as I plan to text him, I'm terrified that I've ruined everything. Just 2 hours ago, some of my college friends and I were concluding our weekly game night. We were quite exhausted. It was past 11 p.m. and the conversation had shifted significantly to a point where some were simply ranting about politics. To my left was the loudest friend in the group, and to my right was the friend mentioned in the title. There were two additional people sitting at the table with us. My loud friend to my left began imitating a particularly irritating politician, yelling to such an extent that I had my fingers over my ears for some time and quietly asked him to stop shouting, but he did not hear me. I frequently request that he lower his volume a bit. We have had some playful banter in the past, so I rose from my chair, placed my hands on his shoulders, and shouted in an even louder tone for him to just finally be quiet in what I believe we both understood to be a playful manner. I did exaggerate my annoyance, but I do not think I came off as aggressive, merely loud. I immediately felt guilty for yelling at him, but he can be extremely irritating at times. My back was turned toward the other three people, so I could not see that the friend on my right had apparently visibly jumped at that, as I learned later. I quietly apologized to everyone at the table when I sat down again in a "I'm sorry, please continue" manner because everyone, aside from the person I yelled at, seemed taken aback. At that point, the conversation continued somewhat awkwardly. Almost 2 minutes later, I heard my friend on the right say, "If you do this again, I will exclude you from here." I was not even sure at first if that was directed at me, but it was. This was the first time I realized something was amiss, and I had no idea what I had done to warrant his threat to exclude me from game night. So I inquired, and one of the girls told me, "I think it's pretty obvious." Everything grew incredibly silent, so I asked again if I had done something wrong. I often struggle with reading the room. No one wanted to share anything, but it was clear they thought I had done something inappropriate. The friend to my left told me that we would discuss it later. They quickly packed their things and left for another room to clean up. This left only me and the friend on my right, who had just threatened to exclude me from game night. I did not connect this to my excessive shouting, admittedly, very loud a few minutes earlier. I honestly thought that my very mumbled political comments just before the conversation ended had been misinterpreted. I replayed everything I had said repeatedly, but nothing stood out. The two of us sat in silence for a while, and when I looked at him, I noticed for the first time how distraught he appeared, lightly crying, breathing stuttered. He seemed very unwell. He asked me to leave for a few minutes and mentioned he had issues with panic attacks. That was when it clicked and I apologized for my outburst. He told me it was all right and that I could not have known, but still asked me to exit. I encountered the others a few rooms away. Some went back to check on him, and I stood there staring blankly, unable to convey anything when people asked how I was doing. I felt disconnected, simply pondering my loud outburst, everyone acting as if I had committed a terrible offense, yet no one informing me of what I had done. I was doing some hand motions to calm myself down. The friend I yelled at wanted to explain the situation and our friend's panic attacks, but I told him that it seemed too private for him to share. I did not want someone else to disclose this information when it truly was not my business. He then told me not to feel guilty, reiterated that I could not have known about our friend's triggers caused by sudden yelling, but also suggested that it would be best for me to go home. I waited a few more minutes, but he was essentially the last person I saw. The other three were a few rooms away, and I did not want to disturb them. I felt bad and quite rude for leaving without saying anything, yet I did not want to escalate the situation further. Now I feel terrible about the entire experience. I do not truly feel guilty. I know my actions were unnecessary, but there was really no way for me to know what it might cause. I just feel bad. I am somewhat frustrated with everyone except for the friend who had a panic attack, particularly with one girl, for not informing me of what was happening while claiming it was obvious. I had no idea until he told me. We are not even close enough for him to discuss this with me. The only person I am close enough to call a friend is probably the loud guy. I am very shy and typically extremely quiet. I moved to this town a year ago, and it has been quite challenging to meet people and stay in touch. I only met them a few months ago, and they are the first individuals with whom I have actually managed to form somewhat of a bond, but I have been struggling greatly to grow closer to them. I still feel like an outsider in this group. Even those who have known each other just as long as I have seemed so much more connected. This is why she also remarked that it was obvious. She expected I understood by now because she assumed I was just as close to the others as she was since we joined the group around the same time. But I am not. I hardly know them. They have been nothing but kind to me today. Yet everything I have attempted to build feels like it is crumbling in my hands after this evening. I know my friend told me that I could not have known about his panic attacks, but I am still worried this might have been too much for him, and our relationship will not be the same. I genuinely like him, but he is the one with whom I have found it hardest to engage in conversation. The timing of this fallout could not be more inconvenient, as we are heading to a conference, a glorified field trip, as a larger group in 2 days. I had been hoping to spend time with him there, but now I am anxious about attending, particularly as sleeping arrangements could be a bit cozier. This has been incredibly distressing for me, as it feels like all my fears have come true at once. A significant part of why I struggle to talk to people is that once I start, I can become very animated and talkative in a matter of seconds, making me worry that I come across as overwhelming when others are expecting a quieter interaction. Now, I have indeed been too much. I am also extremely apprehensive about my inability to read the room and committing another faux pas. I did this time, and even those who knew of my struggles did not bother to inform me regarding what I did wrong. I did not want to disturb him further that night. However, I plan to send him a text message in the morning to apologize, inquire how he is doing, and ask if he is comfortable with me being at the conference in a few days or if he would prefer space. I might also inquire if he wants to discuss it in person, depending on how things develop. I genuinely want to. I had a handmade gift for his upcoming birthday in a week. I managed to get him to play Magic, the Gathering with me a few times when we were alone together. I have been desperately striving to cultivate a deeper friendship with him for months now, despite his barriers. If he has built any new ones, I am uncertain if I can overcome those. I know everything will probably be fine, as has often been the case, but the entirety of this evening is weighing heavily on me.